Seraphine clutched her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders as she approached the grand crystal pavilion. The building glowed with enchanted fire lanterns, casting dancing shadows across the cobblestone path. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her scales, usually hidden beneath layers of fabric, caught the moonlight and shimmered with hues of deep purple and silver. She was a monster girl in a world that celebrated pure dragons. And tonight she had been set up for what she knew would be her greatest humiliation yet. The invitation had come through Celeste, her stepsister, who lived in the grand manor on the hill while Seraphine worked in Grandmother Opal's modest apothecary shop. "Someone wants to meet you at the dragon ceremony," Celeste had said with a smile that never reached her eyes. He specifically asked about the quiet girl with healing hands. Seraphine should have known better. Celeste had never shown her kindness. But Grandmother Opal had encouraged her to go, touching her cheek gently. "Sometimes, child, the universe surprises us. Go with your head high," now standing at the entrance where dragon nobles mingled in their finest silks and jewels. Seraphine felt like a shadow trying to join the sun. The ceremony was meant to celebrate the unity between different magical beings, but she knew the truth. It was a place where the powerful displayed their status, and the rest watched from the margins. She stepped inside. The pavilion's interior took her breath away despite her anxiety. Floating crystals illuminated the space with soft rainbow light. Tables were arranged in circles around a central stage, where musicians played haunting melodies on instruments made from dragon bone and enchanted wood. The air smelled of jasmine and smoke. A hostess with wings of pale blue guided her through the crowd. Seraphine kept her gaze down, but she could feel eyes following her. Whispers rippled like water around stones. She recognized some faces from the market. Nobles who had never acknowledged her existence before. The hostess stopped at a table near the edge of the pavilion, positioned where everyone could see. "Your companion is already here," she said before gliding away. Seraphine looked up and froze. Sitting at the table was not the older merchant or awkward outcast she had expected. Instead, a young man with features that could only belong to high dragon nobility waited with perfect posture. His hair was dark as midnight, swept back to reveal elegant cheekbones and eyes that held the deep amber glow of dragon fire. He wore simple clothes, a black tunic and leather pants, but they fit him with the precision of custom tailoring. Most striking were the subtle silver patterns visible along his neck, the mark of dragon royalty. This had to be a mistake. Or worse, a trap. Then she heard it. Laughter, sharp and cutting, from 3 tables away. Celeste sat with her friends, all daughters of prominent families. One of them held up a small mirror, angling it to capture Seraphine's reaction. Another leaned close to whisper, and their giggles carried across the space like poisoned arrows. "This is perfect," one voice said, just loud enough. "Look at her face." She actually thought this was real. Seraphine's cheeks burned. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the night and never show her face again. But then, something unexpected happened. The young man stood, and when he moved, there was grace in every gesture. He pulled out the chair across from him and met her eyes directly. "You must be Seraphine," he said. His voice was warm, like honey mixed with smoke. "I'm Thornwick. Please, sit." There was no mockery in his tone. No hidden smirk or sideways glance at the watching crowd. He simply waited, patient and genuine. Seraphine hesitated. Every rational thought told her this was part of the joke, that sitting down would only deepen her embarrassment. But something in his eyes stopped her from fleeing. They held kindness, yes, but also something else. Loneliness. Recognition. As if he, too, knew what it felt like to be watched and judged. She sat. The laughter from Celeste's table faltered, confusion replacing amusement. Thornwick settled back into his seat. "I apologize for the location. I know this ceremony can be overwhelming. Truth is, I almost didn't come myself. Then why did you?" The question escaped before Seraphine could stop it. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Because someone told me there was a healer in the lower city who could cure scale rot with nothing but herbs and intention. I wanted to meet someone with that kind of gift." Seraphine blinked. She did have a talent for healing, learned from Grandmother Opal over years of careful study. But she had never imagined anyone beyond their small circle of customers would notice, let alone care. "I'm not anyone special," she said quietly. "Just an apprentice? I doubt that very much." Thornwick leaned forward slightly. "May I ask you something? When you heal, do you feel the pain of the one you're helping?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that. "Yes," she admitted. "Every time. It's like their hurt becomes mine for a moment, and then it fades for both of us." Thornwick nodded slowly. "That's remarkable. Most healers create distance to protect themselves. You do the opposite." They talked as platters of food arrived. Delicate pastries filled with honeyed fruits, roasted vegetables seasoned with mountain herbs, and crystallized flower petals that dissolved on the tongue. Seraphine barely tasted any of it. She was too focused on the conversation. On the way, Thornwick listened, like her words actually mattered. He told her about growing up in the Dragon Keep, fortress carved into the northern mountains. "People think being royalty means freedom," he said, "but it's the opposite. Every choice is scrutinized. Every friendship questioned. I have advisors, guards, teachers, but very few people who just see me as Thornwick." "That sounds lonely," Seraphine said. "It is." He met her gaze again. "Which is why tonight feels like breathing fresh air for the first time in months." Around them, the ceremony continued. Dragons shifted into their true forms and spiraled through the air in choreographed dances. Music swelled and faded. But at their small table, time seemed to slow. Seraphine found herself laughing at Thornwick's stories about his friend Jasper, who once accidentally enchanted the entire throne room to smell like burnt cabbage. She shared stories, too, about Grandmother Opal's tendency to talk to plants as if they were old friends, and the time she had accidentally given a customer a love potion instead of a sleeping draft. The embarrassment had been terrible, but the couple had ended up happily married. "See?" Thornwick said with a grin. "Magic in unexpected places." The evening wore on. Celeste and her friends eventually left, their entertainment spoiled by the genuine connection unfolding before them. Other guests whispered and stared, but Seraphine found she cared less with each passing moment as the musicians played their final song. Thornwick walked her to the pavilion's entrance. The night air was cool and sweet, with the scent of night-blooming flowers. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not walking away when you saw me, for giving this a chance." Seraphine looked up at him, at this dragon prince who had somehow made her feel seen. "Thank you for not being what I expected," he smiled. "Would you like to meet again? Somewhere quieter, perhaps? The moonlit gardens are beautiful this time of year." "I'd like that." She walked home through empty streets. Seraphine touched her chest, where warmth had settled. For the first time in years, she felt something dangerous and wonderful blooming inside her. Hope behind her. The shadows of the pavilion, Thornwick watched until she disappeared from sight. Then he spread his silver wings and flew toward the mountains, his mind already counting the hours until he could see her again. The moonlit gardens lived up to their name. Ancient trees with silver bark stretched toward the sky, their leaves glowing softly in the darkness like captured starlight. Streams of luminescent water wound through carefully tended paths, and flowers that only bloomed at night released their perfume into the air. It was a place between worlds, neither fully wild nor completely tamed, and it had become Seraphine and Thornwick's sanctuary. They had been meeting there for 3 weeks now, always after sunset, when the gardens emptied of daytime visitors. Seraphine would finish her work at the apothecary, change into her one good dress, and slip through the eastern gate. Thornwick would arrive on silent wings, landing in a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. Tonight, Seraphine arrived first. She settled on a stone bench near the whispering fountain, structure carved from marble that seemed to murmur secrets in a language just beyond understanding. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her shawl. Each meeting made her feel more alive and more terrified. She was falling for someone she had no right to love, someone whose world existed in castles and crowns while hers smelled of dried herbs and modest living. The soft sound of wings breaking air made her look up. Thornwick descended gracefully, his dragon form magnificent in the moonlight. Silver scales caught every ray of light. transforming him into something that belonged in legends. When his feet touched ground, magic shimmered around him like heat waves, and suddenly he stood before her in human form, slightly breathless and smiling. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sitting beside her. Council meeting ran long. Father wanted to discuss trade agreements with the eastern clans. "It's all right." Seraphine felt the familiar flutter in her chest that came whenever he was near. "How was it?" Thornwick sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Exhausting." They talked for hours without saying anything meaningful. Meanwhile, people in the outer villages struggle with basic needs, but suggesting we redirect resources to help them is considered radical thinking. This was something Seraphine had learned about Thornwick over their meetings. Beneath the royal exterior lived someone who genuinely cared about those the nobility often ignored. He asked detailed questions about her healing work, about the families she helped who couldn't afford expensive dragon physicians. He listened with an intensity that made her feel valuable. "You'd make a good king," she said softly. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Would I? Sometimes I think I'd make a better healer. Or a gardener. Something where the impact is visible and real. But you could make that impact as king. You'd have the power to change things." "Power is complicated, Seraphine." He reached out, then hesitated, his hand hovering near hers. She closed the distance, lacing her fingers through his. The touch sent warmth spreading through her entire body. Father rules with tradition and strength. He believes dragons should remain separate, superior. Any suggestion of equality with other magical beings is seen as weakness. "What do you believe?" Thornwick turned to fully face her. In the moonlight, his amber eyes seemed to glow with inner fire. "I believe the strongest thing anyone can do is choose connection over isolation. I believe someone who heals without asking for payment is worth more than 100 lords in their fancy towers. I believe you've taught me more about real magic in 3 weeks than I learned in 20 years of formal education." "Thornwick, I'm nobody. I'm a monster girl who lives above an apothecary shop. Your father would never approve. Your people would never accept it. You keep saying that." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "But you're wrong. You're not nobody. You're someone who feels other people's pain and chooses to heal it anyway. You're someone who makes the world tangibly better every single day. That's not nothing. That's everything." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let herself fall completely into this feeling, this connection that grew stronger each time they met. But fear held her back. The fear of inevitable heartbreak, of reaching for something beautiful only to watch it shatter. "Show me your scales," Thornwick said gently. "Please, you always hide them." Seraphine tensed. Her scales were the visible mark of what she was, the reason people stared and whispered. They covered her arms, her shoulders, parts of her back, shimmering in colors that shifted between purple and silver, depending on the light. Most days she kept them hidden beneath long sleeves and high collars. But this was Thornwick. He had shared his fears, his frustrations, his dreams with her. Slowly, she unwrapped her shawl and pushed up her sleeves. The scales caught the moonlight, gleaming like polished gems. Thornwick stared, but not with the revulsion she had learned to expect. His expression held wonder. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her arm. She nodded, unable to speak. His fingers touched her scales with reverence, tracing the patterns they formed. "They're beautiful," he whispered. "Like twilight made solid. I've never seen anything like them." "They're a curse," Seraphine said, old pain rising. "A mark that I don't belong anywhere. Too human for monsters. Too monstrous for humans. They're proof that you're unique." Thornwick continued his gentle exploration, and she realized his touch didn't hurt. Usually, people touching her scales felt wrong, abrasive, but his fingers moved over them like water, natural and right. The world needs people who exist between categories. We need bridge builders, not wall makers. Something broke open inside Seraphine then. She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped his arms around her. They sat like that for a long time, listening to the fountain whisper and the night birds sing their mysterious songs. I've never felt this way before, Thornwick admitted into her hair. Like I could be completely myself. No performance, no careful words, just honest. I know, Seraphine said. Me neither. They talked until the moon reached its highest point. Thornwick told her about his mother, who had died when he was young, taken by an illness that no healer could cure. She would have liked you, he said. She believed in kindness over power, too. Seraphine shared memories of her own mother, lost to her when she was barely old enough to remember. Grandmother Opal says she had scales like mine, that she was beautiful and brave and refused to hide what she was. Like you, Thornwick said. I hide every day, not here. Not with me, as the night deepened. Thornwick taught her about dragon magic, how they drew power from the elements themselves, from fire and air and the deep earth. Seraphine showed him how healing magic worked, how she could sense the flow of life energy and redirect it, mending what was broken. Try it on this, Thornwick said, pointing to a wilted flower near the path. Show me. Seraphine knelt beside the dying plant. She placed her hands around it without touching, feeling for its fading energy. There, just a whisper of life remaining. She drew from her own strength that warm pool of power that lived in her center and guided it gently into the flower. The effort made her gasp. Pain bloomed in her chest, the echo of the plant's suffering, but she pushed through it. The flower responded. Its stem straightened. Color returned to its petals. Within moments, it stood tall and vibrant, as if it had never been sick at all. Thornwick watched with undisguised amazement. That's incredible. You gave it your own life force. Just a little, Seraphine said, slightly dizzy. It grows back. Still. He helped her stand, steadying her. That kind of selflessness is rare. Most magic users hoard their power. They walked together along the glowing streams, hands intertwined. Seraphine felt happier than she could remember being, but underneath the joy ran a current of anxiety. This couldn't last. Surely someone would discover them. Surely reality would intrude on this perfect bubble they had created. Her fears proved prophetic. As they rounded a corner near the garden's northern gate, a figure stepped out from behind an ancient oak. Lord Obsidian, king of the dragon realm, stood with arms crossed and eyes blazing with cold fire. He was larger than Thornwick, his presence radiating authority and barely contained fury. Even in human form, he was terrifying, Father Thornwick said, stepping protectively in front of Seraphine. What are you doing here? I might ask you the same question. Lord Obsidian's voice was deep as thunder. But I already know the answer. Jasper told me everything. Seraphine felt ice flood her veins. Jasper, Thornwick's closest friend, had betrayed them. Jasper was worried about you, Lord Obsidian continued. As am I sneaking away to consort with a monster girl? Have you lost your mind? Don't call her that, Thornwick said, his voice hardening. Her name is Seraphine, and she's more honorable than half the nobles in your court. Honor is irrelevant. You will leave my son alone. Whatever fantasy you've constructed here ends tonight. Seraphine found her voice, though it shook. Your Majesty, I never meant any disrespect. I'll go. No. Thornwick grabbed her hand. You're not going anywhere. Father, you can't control who I care about. I am your king before I am your father, Lord Obsidian said. And as your king, I command you to end this foolishness. You have a duty to your people, to your bloodline. This alliance is impossible and inappropriate. Because she's not pure dragon? Because she doesn't have a title or lands? Because she is beneath you in every way that matters in our world. The words struck Seraphine like a physical blow. She had always known this truth, but hearing it spoken so bluntly made it real in a way her fears never had. She tried to pull her hand from Thornwick's grasp, but he held firm. If that's what you believe, Thornwick said to his father, then our world needs to change. Lord Obsidian's expression darkened. You are young and naive. This infatuation will pass. You will forget this girl and fulfill your responsibilities. That is not a request. He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy with finality. When he reached the gate, he paused. You have 1 week to end this, Thornwick. If you do not, I will make sure she can never enter these gardens again. I will make sure she cannot practice her healing within our territories. Do not test me on this." Then he was gone, leaving only silence and the gentle sound of water flowing over stones. Seraphine pulled away from Thornwick, wrapping her arms around herself. "He's right. This was foolish. We live in different worlds, Seraphine. No. Yes." Tears streamed down her face now, hot and bitter. "I knew this would happen. I knew better than to hope. You should go back to your castle and find someone appropriate. Someone who won't ruin your future." "You're not listening to me," Thornwick said desperately. "I don't care about appropriate. I care about you." But Seraphine was already backing away, toward the eastern gate and the dark streets beyond. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But your father is right. I could never be what you need." She ran then, her scales catching moonlight one last time before shadows swallowed her. Behind her, she heard Thornwick call her name, anguished and pleading. But she didn't stop. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs trembled. Ran until she reached Grandmother Opal's shop and collapsed inside. Sobbing through the window, she glimpsed silver wings rising toward the mountains, carrying someone whose heart was breaking just as badly as her own. The next 5 days passed in gray monotony. Seraphine threw herself into work, grinding herbs until her fingers ached, organizing supplies that didn't need organizing, taking any task Grandmother Opal offered just to keep her mind occupied. But nothing helped. Every quiet moment brought memories of the gardens, of gentle touches and conversations that made her feel whole. Grandmother Opal watched with knowing eyes but said little. She brought Seraphine tea in the evenings and sat beside her, a comforting presence that asked no questions. On the third night, she finally spoke. "Running from love doesn't make it hurt less, child. It just makes you hurt alone," said Dragon Prince, Seraphine said. "I'm nobody. You'll heal the sick. You ease suffering. You make the world better simply by existing in it." Grandmother Opal's weathered hand covered Seraphine's. "That's not nobody. That's someone worth fighting for." But Seraphine couldn't shake Lord Obsidian's words. "Beneath you in every way that matters." The truth of her position in this world had been made brutally clear. Loving Thornwick wouldn't change the social structures that kept them apart. It would only bring him pain and conflict with his father, potentially costing him his crown, his future, everything he had been raised to become. So she made the hardest choice she could imagine. She would let him go completely. No more stolen glances at the sky hoping to see silver wings. No more sleepless nights imagining conversations they would never have. She would accept her place and move forward. On the 6th day, Celeste appeared at the shop. Seraphine tensed when she saw her stepsister's perfect face peering through the doorway. But Celeste's expression held none of its usual smugness. Instead, she looked almost guilty. "Can we talk?" Celeste asked quietly. Grandmother Opal gave Seraphine a meaningful look and retreated to the back room. Seraphine nodded reluctantly, and Celeste stepped inside, her fine clothes seeming out of place among the dried herbs and simple furnishings. "I need to tell you something," Celeste began. "About the blind meeting at the ceremony." "I already know it was a setup," Seraphine said flatly. "It was more than that." Celeste twisted her hands together. "I spread rumors afterward. I told people you were using love potions to trap him. I said you were taking advantage of his grief over his mother. I made sure the story reached the Dragon Keep." Seraphine felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Why would you do that?" "Because I was jealous." Celeste's voice cracked. "Because watching you, the girl who has nothing, capture the attention of someone like Thornwick, while I get ignored by everyone who matters, made me furious. Because I'm petty and cruel and I wanted to hurt you. Well, congratulations. You succeeded, I know." Tears filled Celeste's eyes. "And I'm sorry. I came to tell you that I'm going to Lord Obsidian tomorrow to confess. To tell him the truth about how Thornwick met you, that he chose you without any tricks or schemes. It won't fix everything, but maybe it will help." Seraphine stared at her stepsister, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. Beneath the beauty and privilege lived someone deeply insecure, someone who hurt others to feel powerful. It didn't excuse Celeste's actions, but it made them understandable. "Why are you doing this?" Seraphine asked. 'cause I saw how he looked at you at the ceremony. Like you were the only real thing in a room full of illusions. I've spent my whole life chasing that kind of attention, and I've never found it. You did, without even trying. That should tell me something." After Celeste left, Seraphine sat in silence for a long time. Grandmother Opal emerged from the back room carrying 2 cups of chamomile tea. "That was unexpected," the old woman said.
Oh.
"But it won't change anything. Lord Obsidian has made his position clear, has he? Or has he simply stated what he believes without considering he might be wrong?" Seraphine took the offered tea, but didn't drink it. "It doesn't matter. Thornwick needs to do what's best for his kingdom. And what if you're what's best for his kingdom? What if a king who understands different worlds, who values healing over conquest, is exactly what the realm needs?" Before Seraphine could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Voices raised in excitement, the sound of many people moving through the streets. Grandmother Opal opened the door to find their neighbor, a potter named Thomas, rushing past. "What's happening?" Grandmother Opal called out. "Emergency gathering at the Grand Plaza," Thomas shouted back. "The Dragon Prince is making some kind of announcement. Everyone's being called to witness." Seraphine's heart began to pound. "Grandmother, I can't go there." "Yes, you can. And you will." The old woman's voice held steel beneath its gentleness. "Whatever he's about to do, he deserves to have you there." They joined the crowd, flowing toward the plaza, a massive open space at the city's heart where important announcements were traditionally made. By the time they arrived, hundreds of people had already gathered. Dragons in human form stood alongside merchants, craftspeople, and families. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the raised platform where royalty addressed the masses. Lord Obsidian stood at the platform's center, his expression carved from stone. Beside him, looking small but determined, stood Jasper. And at the platform's edge, facing the crowd with squared shoulders and lifted chin, stood Thornwick. He wore full ceremonial robes, deep blue, embroidered with silver thread, the formal attire reserved for matters of state. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing his face completely. He looked older somehow, as if he had aged years in just days. But when his eyes swept the crowd and found Seraphine, its expression softened with relief and something that looked like hope. The crowd quieted as Lord Obsidian raised his hand. His voice carried across the plaza with unnatural clarity, amplified by magic. "Citizens of the Dragon Realm, we gather tonight to address matters of succession and duty. My son, Prince Thornwick, has requested this assembly to make a statement regarding his future." Lord Obsidian stepped back, his face unreadable. Thornwick moved forward. For a moment, he simply looked out at the sea of faces. Then he began to speak. "My people, I stand before you tonight at a crossroads. For my entire life, I have been trained to rule, taught that strength lies in tradition, that power comes from maintaining what has always been. But recently, I have learned something that contradicts everything I was told to believe." Eyes found Seraphine again in the crowd. She could barely breathe. "I have learned that real strength lies not in separation but in connection. Not in maintaining walls, but in building bridges. I've learned this from someone who heals without asking for gold, who eases pain even when it means taking that pain into herself, who makes the world better simply by existing in it with open hands and an open heart." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Seraphine felt Grandmother Opal's hand squeeze hers tightly. "Many of you know that I have spent time with Seraphine, a healer from the lower city. Some have called this inappropriate. Some have said she is beneath my station. My own father has commanded me to end this connection for the good of the realm." Lord Obsidian's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "But I cannot do that," Thornwick continued, his voice growing stronger. "Not because I am rebellious or foolish, but because doing so would make me exactly the kind of ruler our realm does not need. A ruler who values bloodlines over character, who chooses appearance over substance, who maintains traditions even when those traditions cause suffering." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. When he spoke again, his voice rang with conviction. "If being crown prince means I must abandon someone who represents everything good about our world, someone who embodies the very values I wish to bring to leadership, then I am not worthy of that crown. Therefore, tonight, I formally announce my intention to abdicate my position as heir to the dragon throne." Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. Lord Obsidian's expression finally cracked, showing shock and something that might have been pain. But Thornwick wasn't finished. "However, I make this announcement with a condition. I ask the people of this realm to consider what kind of future you want. Do you want rulers who separate themselves from those they govern, who make decisions from towers without understanding the lives of common people? Or do you want leadership that understands healing and struggle, that values contribution over birthright?" He descended from the platform, moving through the parting crowd. People reached out to touch him, to murmur words Seraphine couldn't hear. He walked with purpose, his eyes never leaving her face. "I renounce my claim to power," he said, his voice now speaking just to her, though the entire plaza listened in breathless silence. "But I do not renounce you. If you'll have me, I choose a life of meaning over a life of luxury. I choose connection over crown. I choose you, Seraphine, today and every day after, if you'll let me." He knelt before her there in the middle of the plaza, in front of hundreds of witnesses. From his robes, he drew a simple ring, not gold or adorned with jewels, but carved from dragon bone and inlaid with scales that shimmered purple and silver, scales like hers. "I had this made from a scale I shed myself," he said, "mixed with the colors of your own, a symbol that what we are together is more beautiful than either of us alone. Will you accept this? Will you accept me, not as a prince, but simply as Thornwick, someone who loves you more than crowns or kingdoms?" Tears blurred Seraphine's vision. Every fear she had harbored, every doubt about her worthiness, seemed small suddenly compared to the enormity of what he was offering. Not just love, but the willingness to sacrifice everything for that love, not asking her to change, but celebrating exactly who she was. She opened her mouth to respond when another voice cut through the moment. Wait, Lord Obsidian had descended from the platform. He walked through the crowd with measured steps until he stood beside his kneeling son. Up close, Seraphine could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between rigid belief and something newer, something softer. "Stand up, Thornwick," the king said. His son slowly rose, never releasing Seraphine's hand. Lord Obsidian looked between them, then turned to address the still silent crowd. "I have been king for 40 years, he said. "I have ruled according to the laws and traditions passed down through generations. I believe this made me strong. But my son has shown me tonight that perhaps I have confused strength with stubbornness." He turned back to Thornwick. "Your mother, before she died, told me something I have never forgotten. She said that the mark of true leadership is not maintaining what is, but having the courage to create what should be. I did not understand her then. But watching you tonight, I begin to." Lord Obsidian's gaze shifted to Seraphine. She fought the urge to look away from those penetrating eyes. "I judged you without knowing you," he said. "I saw only what you lacked by my old standards, not what you possessed by better ones. My son speaks of your healing gift, your selflessness. These are qualities any realm would benefit from having close to power." He took a deep breath. "Therefore, I rescind my command. I will not force my son to choose between love and duty. Instead, I challenge both of you to prove that the two can coexist. Show me, show our people, that connection across differences makes us stronger, not weaker." A collective exhale seemed to move through the crowd. Thornwick stared at his father with undisguised shock. He began. "I mean, you may keep your title and your future, provided you are willing to face the challenges that will come. There will be resistance. There will be those who cannot accept change. But if you believe in this path, truly believe, then walk it with both courage and wisdom." Lord Obsidian placed one hand on Thornwick's shoulder, then surprised everyone by extending his other hand to Seraphine. She took it hesitantly. His grip was firm, formal, but not unkind. "Teach my son to rule with compassion," he said to her, "as his mother would have wanted, and perhaps in turn teach me as well." The plaza erupted in sound. Some cheered, others argued, but the noise washed over Seraphine like a wave. All she could focus on was Thornwick, still holding the ring, still waiting for her answer. She looked at him, at this dragon prince who had chosen her over everything he'd ever known. She thought of Grandmother Opal's words about running from love making you hurt alone. She thought of the life they could build together, challenging and complicated, but real and meaningful. "Yes," she said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Yes, Thornwick. I choose you too. Not the prince, but the person. The one who sees beauty in twilight scales and believes in healing." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, warm against her skin. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was precious and breakable and infinitely strong all at once. Silver wings erupted from his back, instinctive and joyful, wrapping around them both in a protective cocoon. The crowd's noise faded. In that moment, surrounded by wings and warmth and the promise of tomorrow, Seraphine finally understood what Grandmother Opal had meant. Love didn't make you weak. It made you brave enough to believe you deserved beautiful things. When they finally pulled apart, Grandmother Opal was crying. Celeste stood at the crowd's edge with a small, genuine smile. And Jasper approached with obvious relief. "I had to tell your father," Jasper said to Thornwick, "but only because I knew you'd do something dramatic and needed witnesses. You're terribly predictable when you're in love." Thornwick laughed, the sound free and unburdened. "Thank you, old friend, for understanding what I needed even when I didn't." As the crowd began to disperse, still buzzing with excitement and debate, Thornwick and Seraphine walked hand in hand through the plaza. They had no illusions that the path ahead would be easy. There would be nobles who refused to accept her traditions that would push back against change. Moments when doubt would creep in, but they would face it together. A dragon prince learning to rule with compassion, and a healer learning to believe she was worthy of extraordinary love. Different worlds meeting in the middle, creating something new and beautiful. Above them, the moon shone bright and full, casting silver light across the city. In the distance, the moonlit gardens waited, their streams still whispering secrets, their flowers still blooming in the dark. Tomorrow, they would return there, not in hiding but openly. Ready to build a future where love was chosen over fear, where connection triumphed over separation. Tonight, though, they simply held each other and let themselves believe in the impossible thing they had made real.